Okay, so we're 8 lines from the bottom. I'm just going to go over. We're just 8 lines from the bottom of the daf based on Aleph, and the Gemara is asking me, no animili, what's the Makkos in Torah that the first case of the Mishnah, where we say that 2 Adam come and say that Klein is a ben grusha. Klein was born from a union of a kohen with a grusha, so he's a chalal, he's disqualified from kohuna, he doesn't get matnes tuna, he can't serve in the Beis Hamikdash. His daughter is a chalala, she can't marry a kohen, and so on and so forth. So they try to make someone else a chalala, and we say that although usually kasha zamam is that the Edim zoimim get exactly the same oynish, the same predicament that they try to get the nidon, they try to make the defendant chayev, and when they're found falsely, they get that punishment. The exceptions are in the Mishnah, two exceptions, and the first exception in the Mishnah is the chalal, and the question is minani mili. Where do we get this idea that they don't get the kasha zam? So Rabbi Yisroel ben Levi, Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish. Rabbi Yisroel ben Levi says in the name of Shimon ben Lakish. The Amakra, it says in the pasuk, "Vasisem loy kasha zam." It says in the pasuk, you should do to him kasha zam. So from the pasuk, "Vasisem loy kasha zam," it's an extra word. Vasisem loy kasha zam, you should do to him kasha zam. And we learn loy. That's the end of the pasuk that we're quoting. Vasisem loy kasha zam. That's the quote of the pasuk. Loy v'loy lazara. You do to him as to the aid as he plotted to do. Loy v'loy lazara. It can only be a punishment which affects him but not affects his children. Since by definition, if we're going to make him a chalal, so the nature is that it passes down. The din of a chalal is if a chalal goes and marries somebody, it doesn't matter who it is. The child is a chalala or chalal. If the child is a chalal or a chalala. So since by definition, if you make the eid zoim a chalal, you're going to also be affecting his children. And the pasuk says vasisem loy kashazam, not vasisem kashazam. Vasisem loy, it has to be something which only affects him. Loy v'loy lazar. The Gemara asks, okay, if that's the case, so just make a new din. In any event, he's not really a chalal, right? We're giving him the din of a chalal. Not really a chalal. Not, his father didn't marry a grusha, right? Even if he's a kohen, his father didn't marry a grusha. So Fred the Gemara, since the whole inyan of the oynish of a kashazam is anyway knas, it's something that we're superimposing. We're saying they should have the din of a chalal. So taka, let's say that he should be a chalal and not his children. If that's the whole reason why Vasisem lo kashazam doesn't apply, because the pasuk says Vasisem lo, you do to him, it shouldn't affect his children. So just make him a chalal. Say a special din that the eid zoim should become a chalal himself without his children becoming chalal. And with the Gemara answers be'inon kashazam lasis veleka. The Gemara says no, that also doesn't work, because at the end of the day, be'inon kashazam lasis veleka has to be as he plotted to do. You don't do eid zoim, you don't do kashazam lemechsa. You don't do, since he plotted to make someone a chalal, and part of his part of what he was trying to do, whether he intended it or not, part of what he was doing by testifying falsely, this eid zoimim, was to make the guy a chalal plus his children a chalal. So you can't do kasha zamim halfway. Either he's totally kasha zamim, which means then his children will be chalalim, but we can't do that either, because loy v'loy lazari, the word loy in the pasuk tells me that it can only be something which affects him. So therefore, we don't. That's how we know that an eid zoimim doesn't get the regular din of kasha zamim. Again, we only learning from here that the eid zoimim doesn't get kasha zamim. He doesn't become a chalal himself. We don't know yet that he gets Makkos. That's going to be discussed later. So that's one reason given by Rabbi Yisroel ben Levi. Now, Bar Pada, another Amoira, says a different reason. He says, Bar Pada oime kal v'choyme. No, we don't learn it from the pasuk. Or we do learn it from the pasuk, but there's also a kal v'choyme. Different ways of learning in the Rishonim. But either way, he says there's another reason. There's a kal v'choyme. What's the kal v'choyme? Kal v'choyme is like this. So let's just quickly see Rashi on the Gemara that we learned till now, on Rabbi Yisroel ben Levi's makar. V'loy lazari, the Ramaska v'loy lazari. V'im taseu chalal, if you make the eid zoim chalal, v'hu kohen pasal tazari la'olam, you're making his children be passel forever. V'inum kasha zamam, v'hu zamam lifsol es hanidon v'ezara. He intended to passel the nidon, the defendant, and his children, and you can't just make him a chalal, because then you're not going to have kasha zamam. Okay. Bar Pada says as follows: Kal v'choyme. We have a kal v'choyme. You don't need the pasuk because we have a kal v'choyme. The din is like this: a kohen who marries a grusha, his children become chalalim, but he doesn't become a chalal. Even though the kohen did an aveira, he did something wrong. He married a grusha, or he had relations with a grusha. It doesn't matter whether he married her or not. If he had relations with a grusha, so then his children become chalalim, but he still is he's a kosher kohen. That's the din. So says the Gemara, if the one who's mechalal, the one who makes chalalim, he makes his children chalalim, he doesn't become a chalal himself. So someone who actually makes a chalal, actually makes chalalim, doesn't become a chalal himself, doesn't become pasal lekuna. Habolachal, someone who did less than that, someone who just tried to make chalalim by being a eid zoimim, v'lo yichilal eino din shelo yischalal. Isn't it a kal v'chomer that for sure shouldn't be a chalal? The Gemara is saying an interesting kal v'chomer, that when a person actually makes a chalal, when a person actually makes a chalal by causing, like a Klein marrying a grusha and his children become chalal, and he doesn't become a chalal himself. So if you just attempted to make somebody a chalal, right? These Eidim Zaymim who just attempted unsuccessfully to make the nidain, the defendant, a chalal, for sure he shouldn't become a chalal. That's Bar Pada's reasoning. The Gemara straight away asks, Maskif. Maskif means a strong kasha. Maskif le Rabbina. Rabbina says, I've got a strong question that im kein batal to teres Eidim Zaymim. We'll see that in a moment. Let's see Rashi. Hamechal einim is halal. What does it mean that someone who makes halalim doesn't become a halal? Kohen hanoisis a grusha. Kohen who marries a grusha. Shemechalal azari, that he makes his children halalim. He invalidates them from kona. Ein hu atzmei mischalam in kona. Yet he doesn't himself become mechulal from kona. He doesn't become invalidated from kona himself. So if someone who makes halalim doesn't become a chalal, for sure, someone who just tries to make a chalal shouldn't become a chalal. An Eizayim who tried, who wanted to make halal, but wasn't successful, didn't actually make halal. Maskif lo Rabbina. Rabbina says strong kasha. What's the strong kasha? I'll say it outside first, and then I'll say it inside. That the whole din of kasha zomam is actually doesn't follow this logic. What was the logic brought by Bar Pada? The logic advanced by Bar Pada was that if somebody does something, it's more chama than attempting. If you actually were successful in doing something, it's more chama than attempting. And therefore, if already somebody was successful at making halalim doesn't become a halal, so an Eidim who attempted and was unsuccessful in making halalim, for sure he shouldn't become a halal. But that's based on the premise that that someone who tries to do something, someone who successfully does something is more chamor, is more of a reason to be mechayev than someone who tries, which logically makes sense, but by Eid Zomim doesn't apply at all. By Eid Zomim, there's a limud kasha zomam, but loy kasha also. The Pasuk says, "Vasisim loy kasha zomam." The din of Eid Zomim only applies when the Eidim attempted to, let's say, Eidim come and say Reuven killed Shimon. So they attempted to get Reuven chayiv misa, the herek, the sayaf. So then the chayiv, if they were found fault. But let's say the Bezin actually executed the Reuven based on the Eidos. We say they don't get misa. Why? It's a different discussion. But al kopanim, there's different reasons. There's a famous Ramban in Parashas Mishpatim, I think. Don't get anything. Yeah. So we're a little bit short for time today. So yeah. So that's what Rabbina's kasha is. You're right. In general, the logic is that someone who's successful at doing something is more of a reason to be mechayev than attempting. But by Eidim Zom, we see clearly that's not the case. Someone who attempts is chayev, kasha zomam, v'loy kasha asa. Maskif lo Rabbina, im kein batal to teres Eidim Zom. If you're going to use such kal v'chomer, such logic for kal v'chomer, you've been mevatel the whole Torah of Eidim Zom, the whole din of Eidim Zom. Why? Because if so, you would say the following kal v'chomer, which for sure is not true. What's the following kal v'chomer? We'd say like this: if already someone who successfully stoned somebody, which according to Rashi, we'll soon see inside, means that somebody who was made on somebody that is chayiv skila. Someone was testified that Reuven was mechal Shabbos, for example, and Bezin actually killed him based on their eidos einoy niskal. He doesn't get stoned because of this din of kasha zom and v'lo kasha. So habolisko v'lo sakar. For sure, someone who just attempts to get someone stoned, right, and was found to be a zoyman before they actually carried through on the din, einoy din shelo yisakar, for sure shouldn't get. In other words, if you're going to follow this kal v'chomer, then it's actually going to be like this. You're going to say like this: if already somebody was successful at getting somebody stoned because he was made that Reuven was mechal Shabbos and Bezin actually killed Reuven based on his eidos, and then he was found zoyman, we know the din is that he doesn't get stoned. So you'll use the same logic that we said earlier, that successfully doing something is more chamor, is more of a reason to be mechayev than attempting. So then, if someone successfully stoned somebody through his eidos, he doesn't get stoned. He doesn't get the kasha zomim because kasha zomim le kasha asa. So then, gotal to teres Eidim Zomim, because if you attempted to do it, you also, in other words, the whole din of kasha zomim le kasha asa is counterintuitive. It's against this logic. It's a special din. There's a chiddush of the Torah that the oynish only applies if you attempted to do it. You kasha zomam, you plotted, but you weren't successful in getting the person killed. But if you actually were successful, then there's no such thing. So that's what. So the Gemara concludes, rather we go back, the literal translation of mechavarta means clear. Ela mechavarta, it's clear that we go back to the teretz of Kiddushanina Meikar like we answered earlier. So what have we said till now, especially for those who just came, that there's two mekairas, there's two reasons advanced by the Gemara why Eidei ben Grusha ben Chalutza, Eidim who say that somebody was born from a Klein marrying a Grusha and he's a Chalal, they don't get the same Kasha Zamam. They don't get the Oynish that they plotted to do. The first reason is given by the Gemara because it says Loi v'loi lazaroi. Says in Vasisam Loi Kasha Zamam, Loi v'loi lazaroi. It's only when it can't affect his children. And then Bar Poda says a Kal V'Chomer, which is ultimately rejected. His Kal V'Chomer is that if you actually did something, if you actually made halal, I mean the kohen, meaning the kohen who marries a grusha, he doesn't become a halal. So if you attempted, for sure you shouldn't be. The Gemara rejects that by saying that logic goes against the whole kasha Eidim Zomim, because Eidim Zomim we have a klal kasha Zomim v'lo kasha asa, that is only when you plot and you attempt to get somebody punished that you get that punishment. But when you're actually successful through your false edus in getting the person punished, then you don't get the kasha Zomim. So you can't use such a kal v'chomer to explain the din of chalal. So we go back to the original pshat. Okay. Weiter. Yeah. So now we go to the second case of the Mishnah. The second case of the Mishnah is two Eidim come and say someone's chayav galus. How do they say? Two Eidim come and say, are we Rashi? 100%. Rashi. So it says Rashi, we saw Imkain, we're up to, I think. Imkain, im basa lidrish kal v'chomer zeh. If you're coming to be doirish this kal v'chomer, the last Rashi on the page with that base on Madala. Im basa lidrish kal v'chomer zeh be'edim zayimim. If you're going to be doirish such a kal v'chomer which understands that the chamor, the more of the reason to be mechayav is a case where a person who successfully made halal and successfully did something. But Alta Torah has a masam. You've been mevatel the whole Torah of Azama. Why? Because then you say the following kal v'chomer. Ma hasoikel ein iskal. Then you would follow the logic that you would say that somebody who successfully would cycle somebody through his eidos. He was made that Reuven was mechal Shabbos or some other avera which you chayiv skila for. So it says Rashi, Eidim shelo yehuzmu ad shenerag hanidoin. Eidim who only proven false after the defendant, after the nidon already was killed. And then became huzam ein erogin. We know the din is that they don't get killed. Kidaminu bepirkin. I think Gemara says later dafayam with base hargu ein erogin. If the nidon was already killed, ein erogin, the Eidim zaymim don't get killed. The kasha zaman v'lo kasha asa. The pasuk says kasha zaman v'lo kasha asa. And if you're going to say that, so then habolis. But if you're going to accept the logic that being successfully killing somebody through your eidos is more chamor than attempting, so then the case of attempting will never be kasha zaman ever, because when you're successful, you never get punished with the kasha zaman. So if you attempt habolis go v'lo sakal shehuzam ad sheloi nereg anidain. So for sure, there's not going to be kasha zaman in such a case. You can't apply this logic. Yeah, but you're right. Yeah, you can't apply this logic of being successful at getting something done, being more chamer than attempting, when the pasuk itself of kasha zaman like kasha asa tells me otherwise. Yeah. Okay. So weiter in the Mishnah in the Gemara, it's the third line of that base on the base. So here we go on to the second case of the Mishnah. The second case, in other words, the second exception of the Mishnah where there's no kasha zaman, which is two Eidim who come and say that somebody is chayav galus. The two Eidim come and say someone killed someone b'shoigeg. So we say that although you try to get a guy sent to galus, you don't get sent to galus yourself. The Eid Zaymim, who's been proven false, doesn't go to galus himself. So what's the marker? So here it's actually interesting. We're not bringing a pasuk from the parish of Eidim Zaymim. We're bringing a pasuk from the parish of galus. In galus, it says, let's see inside. We know any milli. So what's the marker in the Torah for the din that someone who's chayav galus doesn't get the kasha zaman? On the Rish Lakish says the Amakra, the pasuk says hu yanus al achas arm. Regarding somebody who killed b'shoigeg, the pasuk says hu yanus al achas arm. He should run to one of the cities. Kanira, the word who is extra. Hakapanim, we're being doirish the word who yanus al achas arm. He should run to one of the cities. We learn from there who yanus. He should run. Only the person who kills b'shoigeg has to go to galus. Hu v'lo zaymemin. It only applies to the person who killed b'shoigeg himself, but not to zaymim. So again, it's a xeris akasov, I guess, that by galus is a special din. Hu yanus al achas arm, hu v'lo zaymemin. So okay, there's no Rashi here. Here too, the Gemara attempts to say that we don't need a pasuk, we have a kal v'chomer. Rabbi Yochanan says a kal v'chomer. So last time was Bar Pada. Here we have Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan, I'm a kal v'chomer. I have a kal v'chomer. And here you have to read the Gemara very carefully, because it sounds like it's saying something that it's not saying. I'll explain it. Let's read inside. Omahu sha'asa ma'isa b'mezid. Says the Gemara. Omahu sha'asa ma'isa b'mezid eina goyla. If already someone who does a ma'isa b'mezid eina goyla, referring to somebody who kills b'mezid, someone who kills b'mezid, even if he doesn't get let's say there was no Adim, or there's no Asra, let's say, there's no Asra, so there's no warning. They didn't forewarn him that if you do this, you're going to get Misa. So the din is, you can only give an Oynesh of Misa, or any Oynesh really, if you're warned before, the person's warned. So let's say he wasn't warned, so he's going to actually get off scot-free with Dinei Adam. He's not going to be, there's a din of Manifino Selekippa sometimes, but as far as the Dinei Din Torah, there's no Oynesh for somebody who kills Rameza without Hasra, and he doesn't get Golos even. Doesn't get Golos, even though a Shoigeg who kills gets Golos, right? There's no Hasra by a Shoigeg. The definition, the whole story of a Shoigeg, someone did it without realizing. Shoigeg goes to Golos, but the Mazid who doesn't have Hasra doesn't get Golos. Someone who kills Rameza is Chayav Misa usually, but the parameters of being Chayav Misa is only when there's Adim who warned him and they gave him Hasra. Let's say there was no Hasra, so he doesn't get a punishment. He doesn't get Misa, but nor does he get Golos either. So says the Gemara like this. I'll make Chavachem like this. In other words, Mahusha also Maisa b'mezid. If already he, meaning the Ritzeach, who kills b'mezid, the case of a Ritzeach who kills b'mezid, ain't a goyla, doesn't get Golos. Hey, Edim Zoimimim, Shaloi also Maisa b'mezid, who didn't do a Maisa b'mezid. So this is what you have to read carefully. When it says Shaloi also Maisa b'mezid, it doesn't mean they didn't do b'mezid. The emphasis is on the word Maisa. They didn't do a Maisa b'mezid, rather they did a Dibur b'mezid. Right? The Adam Zayim Shaloi also Maisa b'mezid. They didn't do a Maisa b'mezid. They did Dibur b'mezid. So Einoidin Shaloi Yiglu. That's the end of the Raya of Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan is saying that basically the way I understand it is that Mezid has been excluded from the Torah of Golos. If someone who's Ritzech b'mezid doesn't get Golos, someone who's Ritzech b'mezid doesn't get Golos. Kal v'chomer Edom Zoyim who do less than actual Maisa b'mezid, didn't kill someone b'mezid, but rather they tried to kill somebody b'dibur with their dibur, which is more kal than Maisa. So for sure they shouldn't get Golos. That's the Kal v'chomer. It's an interesting Kal v'chomer, huh? We have to think about that. You've got me. You tied me in a knot over there.
So the point over here is that you didn't do a Maisa, but you did a Dibur b'mezid.
Why? You did a Dibur b'mezid.
No, meaning if you're gonna make a b'mezid.
We see by Maisa b'mezid there's no Golos, so Dibur b'mezid, which is a step lower, for sure shouldn't get Golos. Yeah.
You kill someone, you do get Golos. Not that b'mezid you don't get Golos. No, you do get Golos.
Yeah, so that's why I hear what you're saying. I'm not 100% sure, but that's why I preface. The way I understand it is we can understand that Mazid and Shoigeg have different rules, but within Mazid, I think so. Within Mazid, if Maisa b'mezid doesn't get, I'm not 100% sure, but this is what I'm thinking. If Maisa b'mezid doesn't get Golos, so for sure Dibur b'mezid shouldn't get Golos. So notice Mazid is excluded. If Maisa doesn't go, for sure Dibur b'mezid doesn't get Golos. So the Gemara, but you're on to the right. You're on the right track. You're on the right track because Shoigeg is even more kal, and you do get Golos. So he just needs a little bit more hezbah. What you're saying needs the Gemara is taka going to slug up the Kal v'chomer along the lines of what you're saying, Rabbi Kesselman, but with a little bit more hezbah, I think. So what's the Gemara continue? So yeah. I'm just saying that. You're on the right track. So says the Gemara. So let's see Rashi, yeah? Husha also Maisa b'mezid ain't a goyla. The final wide line of Rashi. Hahoyrik sha also Maisa. Someone Hahoyrik who did a Maisa in b'mezid. I saw if he did it b'mezid ain't a goyla. Doesn't get golos. Are you going to tell me that's because he gets a bigger oynish of Misa? It's not true. Even when he's not killed, when there's Mezid with Asra, he doesn't get golos. So what do we see? That a Mezid, it doesn't get golos. And if already a Maisa b'mezid doesn't get golos, so the Eidim Zoimim who just did a Dibur b'mezid for sure shouldn't get golos. Heim shaloi also Maisa. Again, the emphasis on they did do a Mezid, they didn't do a Maisa b'mezid. Says Rashi, Elo Dibur ba'alma of a Mezid eidu. They did it a Dibur ba'alma of a Mezid eidu. Einoi din shaloi yiglu ala Mezid. Isn't it the Kal v'chomer? It doesn't make sense that they shouldn't get golos on the Mezid. So that is the Kal v'chomer of Rabbi Yochanan. Mezid is somehow excluded from golos. If already someone who kills b'mezid doesn't get golos, someone who just speaks b'mezid and tries to get somebody killed, not killed, someone get golos, for sure shouldn't get golos. So the Gemara straight away slugs it up from the words v'hihanu senes. Rashi has a gersa v'hihanu senes. The Gemara in front of us says v'hinoi senes. Those words are the beginning of the Shlago. We're slugging up Rabbi Yochanan now. No, we're asking a question on Rabbi Yochanan. No, v'hiani senes. It's not true. Your logic, that logic that you're coming from, which is basically saying that you're highlighting. Yeah, what's Rabbi Yochanan doing? He's highlighting that the Eid Zoimim is more kal than the Ritzach b'mezid. That's what he's highlighting. That the Eid Zoimim is doing a dibble b'mezid and the Ritzach b'mezid is doing a ma'isa b'mezid. So Rabbi Yochanan is highlighting the fact that the Eid Zoimim is more kal than the Ritzach b'mezid, and therefore there shouldn't be golos, because if already the Chomer doesn't get, so for sure the kal. For sure, the one which is the Gemara v'hinei senes. No, that point that you're highlighting, v'hinei senes, means that itself, that svara that you are yourself using as a reason to pater for him from Galus should actually be a reason to be mechayev to Galus. Why? Because what's the reason why Ritzach b'mezid doesn't get Galus? I'm saying it outside before I say it inside. What's the reason why Ritzach b'mezid doesn't get Galus? Not because he somehow Galus is. It's because Galus is not enough of a kapara for him. In other words, Galus wouldn't be good enough. So we leave it to the Eibush is going to punish him. And he gets more chama dika einish b'dini shamayim. But Galus is not enough of an einish. But the logic doesn't follow that someone who does a dibble b'mezid shouldn't get Galus, because the reason why Ritzach b'mezid, who did a ma'isa b'mezid, doesn't get Galus is because Galus is not enough. But maybe it is enough for the guy who did a dibble b'mezid. So that point you, Rabbi Yochanan, are saying to highlight that dibul b'mezid is more kal and therefore shouldn't get galus if we're right from a kal v'chomer, that someone who did a ma'isa b'mezid doesn't get galus, is actually a reason the other way around that he should get galus. Let's see it inside. He only said it. Who sha'asa ma'isa b'mezid lo ilegli. He only said it's that very point that the ritzach b'mezid is more of a did more of a terrible act, more of a chomer dika act. Lo ilegli doesn't get galus because it's more chomer. Ki heichi did lo yitavle kapara, because it's not enough of a kapara. But hey, the Eidim Zoim shelo also ma'aser b'mezid. They only did a dibble b'mezid. Nami liglu. They perhaps could get galus ki heichi dil havlu kapara, because maybe it will be a good enough kapara for them. In other words, that the logic doesn't follow, because the whole reason why Ritzach b'mezid doesn't get galus is because galus isn't enough. So don't make a kal v'chomer, because maybe for the kal, someone who does a dibble b'mezid, the galus is enough. Let's see Rashi inside. V'hi anisanes hamido hazoi sheheveisal lefotram. This midah, this svara, this measurement that you brought to exempt to make the Eidim Potter, hiani senes lem choybes galus, is actually a reason for them to be chayav galus for the following reason. Who lefisha the Ritzach, the guy who killed b'mezid, lefisha oisa ma'isa in b'mezid asoy in a galus, because he does a ma'isa. If he does a b'mezid, he doesn't get galus. The loy tavle kapara, because it's not a good enough kapara for him. But heim shaloy also ma'isa, they more kal. They just did a dibble b'mezid yiglu al zedoinon ki heichi b'chulu. Okay, so that is so now this ends the first half of the equation, right? The Mishnah says two cases where the Eidim Zoimim don't get the regular kasha zama. And we explained why each one doesn't get kasha zama. The chalol eidei ben grusha because of loy v'loy lezarai. Tried to kal v'chomer, didn't work. And eidei galus, the eidim who say that someone killed b'shoigeg, we said hu yanos alachas ha'arim hu v'loy zoimimim. And we tried to kal v'chomer, also didn't work. And that kind of explains the first bit of the Mishnah why they don't get kasha zama. But the Mishnah didn't just say that they don't get kasha zama. The Mishnah said that they get a different einish instead. Loikinas arbaim. Why do they get malchus? You know, where does malchus come from? Right? Just because they don't get kashdam, they should get malchus. So that's the next Gemara. Amma Ola. Ola said inside. Amma Ola. Ola said, let's see inside. Amma Ola, remez le'edim zoimim min atayr minayin. Says the Gemara, where is there remez to edim zoimim min atayr? Straight away the Gemara asks, what do you mean? Remez le'edim zoimim min atayr? Remez le'edim zoimim, you're looking for remez for edim zoimim, some sort of allusion to the din of edim zoimim. V'aksev, it's a mefurish apostle. Vasisim le'kasha zama. Knows the Gemara understands all this question. Not in the way that I explained it, which is the maskan of the Gemara, but face value. Remez le'edim zoimim min atayr minayin. Where do you see edim zoimim hinted to in the Torah? So the Gemara straight away asks. So that obviously can't be pshat, because there's a mefurish apostle. Vasisim le'kasha zama. Elo, rather, pshat is remez le'edim zoimim sheloikim min atayr minayin. Where's the remez le'edim zoimim get malchus min atayr? In other words, where do we find a mocker in the pasuk, or even a remez in the pasuk? In a case where you can't give kasha zama, again, if you give kasha zama, you don't get malchus as well. We're talking about our Mishnah, which is in a case where you don't get kasher zamam, you get malchus. Where do we get this din from? Remez leidim zayim shalokim natar minai. Says Rashi, Remez leidim zayim shalokim. Eide ben grusha or Eide galus. The case of Eide ben grusha or Eide galus. Shepotra makasa midin azama. That the pasuk exempts them, patters them from the din azama. Minayin shein loikim. You've explained to me why they don't get kasher zamam, right? That we explained in the previous Gemara. But minayin shein loikim, from where? Where is the makkah in the Torah that they get malchus? Well, the kamei parich tepuk lemiloisana. Rashi kind of anticipates a question that you'll have. What did the Eid Zoymim do? At the end of the day, the Eid Zoymim testified falsely. That's a lav in the Torah of Loisana V'recha Eid Shakai. So even without any psukim lechora, you don't need any psukim to tell me that an Eid Zoymim, every lav in the Torah gets malchus, right? So an Eid Zoymim is no worse than. So if there's a lav of the Torah where the Torah explicitly says what the punishment is, so then you don't get malchus. But any situation, the general rule is any situation where there's a lav in the Torah says don't do something, and you do it. So if there's no other punishment specified, so then you get malchus. So the Gemara is so the Rashi is anticipating the Gemara's question is going to ask, why do you need a special pasuk? Before you have loisana. But the Gemara at this stage understands that that's not good enough. So the Gemara Taka answers, the chsiv, it says in the pasuk as follows. This is a pasuk which is talking about the din of malchus. It's not talking about Edom Zaymim explicitly. That's not what the parish is clearly talking about. The pasuk over there says, Ki riv bein anoshim. You have this, you have the same Gemara as me. So in Gimel, you see the pasuk. There's a quarrel between people. The Yisroel Mishpat, they come close to the Torah, to the Ushvatum, and the Bezdin judge them. The Bezdin decide who's the Tzaddik, who's the Rasha. The pasuk continues that if the person deserves malchus, if the Rasha deserves malchus, and then continues to say how you give malchus v'pilo hashayfet v'kol lefanav arboim yakenu lo yosef, all the dinim of malchus. So in the parish of malchus we find something interesting, but the pasuk doesn't just say that if someone deserves malchus he gets malchus. The pasuk says that there's a din Torah v'tzdiku es hasadik v'shu es harasha, and this is an interesting thing. And the Gemara is going to learn from here that the pasuk is at least also saying these words to allude to the fact that Edom Zoymim get malchus. How so? So let's see inside. Back in the Gemara, Rosh says in the pasuk that the Bezdin make, this is the Pashup Shap, we're talking about Bezdin, that the Bezdin make the tzaddik, in other words, they exonerate, they find the tzaddik to be innocent. Rasha, they find out who the Rasha is. There's the fight, and they find out who the tzaddik is and who is the Rasha. Then the pasuk continues that if the person deserves malchus, then he gets malchus. Fred the Gemara, Mishum v'tzdikus asadik v'shius harasha v'hoyim bin hakais harasha. Is the reason why someone who's chayiv malchus gets malchus because of v'tzdikus asadik v'shius harasha, because there's a tzaddik over here and a rasha over here? That's how Rashi explains the Gemara's question. Mishum v'tzdikus asadik bitmiyah. Doesn't make sense to say that because of the if the pasuk shot like it seems like from the pasuk is that v'tzdiku and Rishiu, they're coming to Bezdin, the Yisroel Mishpat Ushvatum, v'tzdiku es hasadik, right? The same people who are Ushvatum, the Dayanim who judge them, v'tzdiku es hasadik v'shir sarasha. The Gemara and the way Rashi explains, if v'tzdiku v'shir b'dayanim come, if v'tzdiku v'shir is talking about Dayanim, the tzaddik v'rasha b'bali dinin, and the Dayanim are finding one guy to be a tzaddik and one guy to be a rasha. One of the Bali Dinim was standing in front of him, the people standing in court. Lama leave it stiku tzaddik. V'chulu lichter kiyeh riv ben anashim and nigshel amish for the shvatim hayi ben hakais. Lama huskro can't sit because a tzaddik. Why are we mentioning the fact that there's a tzaddik over there and there's a rasha? V'chichol mokim shestiku beznes azaka b'chiba sachayv yesh malchus. Every time that the Bezdin finds someone to be innocent and they find someone to be guilty, there's malchus. The also call them misty malchus b'vitziku v'shir. It's a very funny thing over there. Others explain it. Other Rishonim explain it better, so to speak. Yeah? You can say such a fear. Yeah. Other Rishonim explain it a little bit better, but I think that this is what Rashi means. Clearer, shall we say? Yeah. That the normally when is someone chai malchus? Someone eats chayla, someone eats chazer. That's usually when you chai malchus. There isn't two people. There's no kiruv bein anoshim. Most of the time when you chai malchus, it's bein noile bein koinoi. There's an avera that you do to Shammai and you chai malchus. Here we have an interesting thing that the Torah prefaces the whole din of malchus with v'tzdikus as had b'shir sarasha. So that's the Gemara's question. Yeah. Mishum v'tzdikus as had b'shir sarasha v'yimin hakos rasha. That's how we get to malchus. That there's a tzaddik and there's a rasha. Right? So how can you have such a situation? The only case that you can have such a situation is with Edom Zaymim. What's pshat? Now by Edom Zaymim, you have a situation where there's a guy, there's a machlokes, there's a nidoin, there's a first set of Edom, and there's a second set of Edom. Before the second set of Eidim come, the Nidoin is understood to be the Rasha, the defendant is understood to be the Rasha, who's Chayiv something, let's say. The Eidim who are coming are Tzaddik, sorry, I'm explaining it wrong, the other way around. Yeah, no, 100%, yeah. Before the Eidim Zomim come, the Nidoin is the Rasha. The Eidim who are coming to testify about the Nidoin are considered to be the Tzaddik, they're saying the truth, we're trusting what they're saying. And that's the situation. When the Eidim Zomim come along, not Eidim Zomim, the Mazimim, the people who make the first set into Zomim and say, no, Yimona Yisam, you were with us, what are they doing? They're saying that no, the person who we thought was a Rosh until now, the Nidoin, they're making him guilty. He didn't do what he did. And the Shiur as a Rosh, they're making the Eidim Zomim to be the Rosh. So the only situation, perhaps the only situation, the situation where it makes sense that the Pasuk is talking about the Stikus Asadi Bashir Sarosha, and then there's Malkus, must be Eidim Zomim. But we don't know about Eidim Zomim getting Malkus. We know that Eidim Zomim Basisim Kasha Zomam. So what comes out? This pasuk is the mocker that whenever you can't do Kasha Zomam, then there's Malkus. It's a remez. That's Taka Lashon of all the remez Eidim Zomim, not the Farish. But Al Kopanim, this is a remez in the Torah for the din of the for the din of Pitayr Shabbat Peh that Eidim Zomim get Malkus when there's no other. When you can't do kasha zam. So let's go back inside. Elo, rather, pshat is Eidim Shiur as a tzaddik. You have a situation where the first set of Eidim made someone who's really a tzaddik into Russia by saying he's chayiv something he isn't. Also Eidim Achrini. Then a second set of Eidim come. V'tzdiku as a tzaddik the meikara, and they say no, the person who's really a tzaddik is a tzaddik, right? V'shavinu lahani risham, and they say that this first set of Eidim are risham. So then v'hoyim bin akos Russia. Then if the person is chayiv malchus, then you give him malchus. So here, yeah.
So, is there no other time where Malchus is given when there's two different people involved?
It's a good question. It's a good question. But
that's clear.
Maybe there are other cases.
Otherwise, it wouldn't be.
No,
We'll just say a Shiur Sarasha and be done.
Yeah. So Rashi doesn't really go down that line, like I said. And normally the Malchus has been on the Ben Koinai, but I think Rashi's really saying what's the relevance to it. Right, not that. Yeah, I think Rashi's really saying. Rashi, what's the relevance? Why does someone's chayiv malchus? He's chayiv malchus. Most of the cases, why tell me tzaddik? What are you telling me? You must be telling me something new. Those words, v'stikas tzaddik b'shir Rasha. Even if there were cases, right? I'm taking. Even if there were cases where there was a tzaddik in the Rasha, you don't need to tell me that. If someone's chayiv malchus, maybe there is a hechetim tzaddik. I can't think of one. But even if there is, why tell me that? The point is that someone who's chayiv malchus is chayiv malchus. Elamai Torah is telling me that no. That v'stikas tzaddik b'shir Rasha. There's a case of Eidim Zomimim, where Yichai Malchus, which is the case of Eideh ben Grusha and Eideh Cholov, they don't get Kasha Zaman, but instead they get Malchus. Straight away the Gemara asks, okay, let's see Rashi. Elo, Rashi. Elo, we must be talking about the Eidim Mishtoi. Eidim Shkorim, false Eidim Shiur Tzaddik, they made a Tzaddik a Rasha. In other words, they falsely claimed someone who was really innocent is guilty of something. Uvo Acherim Bizimim, and others came and proved them wrong, B'imona Yisem, by saying you were with us. V'tzdiku es hanidin shu tzaddik, they exonerated, right? They made tzaddik the defendant shu tzaddik. V'shiu es ha'edim rishayim, and they showed how the first set of edim are rishayim. V'hayim bin akos Rasha, says the pasuk, that if the Rasha is a person worthy of malchus, bin hakos, right? Ben Soira Moira, Ben Torah, yeah. So if he's deserving, somebody who's deserving malchus, im hazama zu bas malchus, how so? She'eni yochel l'kayim bodin hazama b'Torah, because he can't do the regular kasha zamam, can't give the regular oynish of what they plotted to do. Going be'edim and grusha golos, we pila shayf. The pasuk continues by talking about giving malchus. Fred Gemara Akasha, the tepuk lemi loisana. Why do you need this whole v'tzdikas asadi v'shir sarasha? The tepuk lemi loisana. You should. You don't need the pasuk. There's a general rule, right? I explained earlier. Rashi anticipated the question, and he felt the need even to tell it earlier because it seemed to be such a straightforward question, right? Rashi doesn't always say what the Gemara is going to ask. I think the reason why Rashi says it earlier is because it's like glares at you. The tepuk lemi loisan, afraid the Gemara. Why do you need the stikus asadi b'shir Rashi to tell me that Eideh ben Grush and Eideh Golos get Eidim Zomim get malchus? The tepuk lemi loisan. Now, Seris Adibris, the 9th commandment. Yeah, is loisana v'recha eight shaki. You're not allowed to testify falsely. So anybody who testifies falsely, doesn't matter how, is oiva lav. And we know that whenever you're oiva lav, and there's no other punishment specified, in this case there's no other punishment specified because they don't get kasha zam, you should get malchus. But tepik lemi loisana, and for the Gemara, we shum to have a lav shame by ma'isa, the lav shame by ma'isa. No, you can have as a general rule, any lav shame by ma'isa doesn't get malchus. Right? A lav which they're speaking, the Eidim Zomim are speaking, they're not doing an act. So therefore, they don't get Malkus.
How do we learn from Lysana that they get Malkus by everything else?
In the Havamim has a Gemara, huh?
No, how do we learn from Lysana?
We don't learn from Lysana. The Gemara learns from Mistika Asadi Bashir Sarasha. The Gemara is asking that we should learn from Lysana.
What we should learn from Lysana is
It's a lav. Every lav gets Malkus when there's no other. It's a lav. Lysana Brechat Shak. The pasuk says, "Don't testify on your friend falsely." So whenever you testify falsely and there's no other oynish around, so you should get Malkus.
the limit of getting Malkus by every lav is staff of Medus. Saying it's from.
There's a general rule that every lav gets Malkus. Where does the rule that every lav gets Malkus? No. Lysana would just be another example. Exactly. So the Gemara answers, it falls neatly into the category of a lav shem by Maisa and full lav shem by Maisa in Loikanov. An important point, because it's going to come up later, I know I didn't want to sidetrack, but an important point is that most Rishonim learn that ultimately you still need Lysana. Why do you need Lysana? So first of all, is Raya, so that's the case. That the Lysana does play a role. Later on, the Gemara uses the word Lysana. From the Pashas Lashon of the Gemara, it sounds like the Malkus is not from Lysana at all, it's from Mitzdikus Asadi. But most Rishonim learn that it is from Lysana, and they have Rayas for it. But the reason the Chura is quite simple. There's a general rule, Ein Oinshin Elam Kein Mazhirin, you don't give a punishment to somebody unless you warn. In other words, the Torah doesn't just give punishment, so there has to be a clear tzivoy loy, don't do something, in order to get Malkus. So you can't just say there's Malkus from Mitzdikus Asadi alone. There needs to be a tzivoy in the Torah which tells you not to testify falsely, which is the pasuk Lysana V'recha Eit Shaka. What pshat is that Vitzdiku as a tzaddik is being megala that Lysana is an exception to the rule. In other words, if it was only for Lysana, if it was only for Lysana, it's a lav shem b'maisa, but lav shem b'maisa in Loikanov. But Vitzdiku as a tzaddik is megala to you that Lysana is an exception to the rule. It's a case where you get Malkus despite it being a lav shem b'maisa. Okay, so I know we only have a few more minutes. Let's go a little further. Yeah, Rashi, huh? I'm sorry? Let's finish right. Without Rashi, you want to do it? So do without Rashi? Okay, let's see. Okay. So the Gemara continues by saying a brisa, which is a connection to the Mishnah. The Mishnah said two examples of Eidim Zayim who don't get the Kasha Zam. Here we have another two examples. Why the Mishnah doesn't say is a discussion for itself. One simple explanation, by the way, is that the following two cases don't get Malkus. They just don't get Kasha Zama. They just, right? The two cases which we're going to say now is not mamish, don't fit neatly into the Mishnah because it's not cases where you get Malkus. It's just cases where they don't get Kasha Zama. But either way, there's two other cases where they don't get Kasha Zama. There's four different cases by Eidim Zayim that you don't get Kasha Zama. Ein nasim ben grusha mechalutza, which is already in the Mishnah. Ein goyin lari mikla, and now we have two more cases. Ein mishalmin es hakoifer, the einim karim be'avid ivri. Tanakama says two more cases. One is that you don't pay koifer. What's koifer? Koifer is if someone's shor kills somebody 3 times, the shor is muad. The Torah says that really the owner of the shor should be chayiv misa, but nevertheless we don't do that. Misa b'dei shamayim. Rather in koifer, Yisroel of the pasuk says he gives koifer. He gives redemption of his soul. He kind of can. He's ba'etzem chayiv misa, but the Torah says there's a way out of it, and not that you have a choice, but you have to, right? That you can redeem him koifer nafshe, that you give money to the person who was damaged, to the nizak, to the owner of to the Yorshim in this case, right? The shor killed somebody, and so the Eid Zoyim never get paid koifer, even if they were made that someone's shor killed a human being 3 times, they don't pay koifer. That's number 3. But einim karim be'avid ivri. The fourth case is einim karim be'avid ivri. They don't get sold as an avid ivri. What are we talking about? If someone steals, doesn't have enough money to pay off the you need to always pay back what you stole. Sometimes one time, sometimes tefel. But either way, you have to pay what you stole. If you don't have money, so then there's a din that nimkali de bezdin, that you get sold through the bezdin as an avid ivri to pay off your debt. So an eid zoyim who tries to make somebody an avid ivri
by making them incur a debt that they can't.
By saying that they stole and they don't have any money.
What if the aid themselves do have money?
Oh, so that's the Gemara's gonna deal with all of that. If it's here money does it. I don't know if we're gonna be able to get it. Okay, let's see. The einim karim be'avid mishum Rabbi Kiva says another case, a fifth thing. Another, it's not a fifth example, but important to differentiate. The first 4 things of the Tanakama, 4 examples where the Eid Zayim doesn't get the Kasha Zayim. The fifth din is another din about Eid Zayim. Normally there's a din, right? If you agree that you're chayiv 100, if you agree in Bezdin that I'm chayiv $100 to Shimon, you don't need Eidim. Your admission is considered like 100 witnesses in your chayav. However, the Eidim Zoyim, if Eidim Zoyim come to a second beis din, basically, it was first in they were found false Eidim Zoyim in one beis din, and they ran away before the first beis din was able to administer the punishment of kashazam. They go to second beis din and they say, we're Eidim Zoyim. We're Eidim Zoyim. We tried to get somebody chayav Makkos, let's say, or whatever, or money. They don't pay al piatzman. They don't. It's an exception to the rule where we don't say das baldin kameh anymore. So Gemara straight away goes through the reasons. In the first two cases are kedama. We explain the reason. We already said in the Mishnah. Why don't they pay kaifa? Kisavri kufra kapara. They hold that kufra kapara, the kaifa, the money which the Baal HaShor, the owner of the shor, gives to the person, to the Yoshim, of the person who was killed after his shor killed somebody 3 times, the shor muad. So the third or fourth time, shall we say, when the shor kills somebody, he doesn't just he has to pay koifer, which is, we'll soon see what that means. He has to pay money to the Yoshe, the Nerag, to the Yoshim of the person who's killed. So Savri, this man Dama holds kufra kapara. The koifer is a kapara, meaning the way it works, it isn't a monetary payment that you're paying somebody for the loss that you caused them, but rather the lamdas behind the koifer is it's a kapara. Really, you're chayav misa for your shor killing 3 times, and you'll be mechaper for your nefesh by giving this money. The hani labane kapara. Koifer is kapara. And these Eidim Zoyim, their shor never killed somebody, so it doesn't make sense that there should be kaifa. It's 9:15 now. Should I continue? Okay. So that's what the Gemara says. We're going to do without Rashi till the end of the Amud. Yeah. So man tana kufra kapara. Who is the Tana who says kufra kapara? So the Gemara understands like this: there's a machlokes tanoim. Quickly said outside, then inside. There's machlokes tanoim. What's kaifa? Your shor killed somebody a 4th time. So we say in kaifa yushasalav, you redeem your soul. You really a chayav misa. You redeem your soul by paying money. So there's a machlokes tanoim what money you pay. Some say it's the main nizak, meaning you pay the value of the human being who was killed. What does it mean, the value of the human being? You can put a value in someone's life. So no, not really. But in Gemara, in halacha, there is value, meaning you estimate how much that person could be sold as a slave, and that's considered the value, and that's how much you pay of the nizak. Other Tanaim say the main mazik. You're paying the value of your own life because really you're chayav, right? So the Gemara wants to say that the machlokes tanaim, whether the main nizak or the main mazik, is kali the machlokes whether kufra kapara or kufra mamoina. That's the insight. Whether the kaifer is a kapara for your nefesh or it's a regular monetary thing. You cause someone damage, you have to pay. The hani, the Eidim Zoymim, labnei kapara, they don't need the kapara of kaifer because their shor never killed somebody. The whole, Eidim Zoymim can only be chayav when they try to be mechayav somebody with a din. Someone's chayav something. But here, the whole mechanics of kufra kapara, I'll say one explanation given, is that you're being mechaper for your chayav misa that really you should have got. These Eidim Zoymim are not chayav misa. Their shor didn't kill somebody. But the other person is not chayav misa. So ultimately, all they're really trying to get that person to be done is kaifa. So really, we should give them kaifa. But we say, look, it doesn't make sense to give them kaifa because kufra is a kapara for chayav misa, which was linked to their act. There's more to explain. Maybe later. So man tana kufra kapara. Amr Chista, Rabbi Shmuel b'noi Rabbi Yechon ben Rabbi Chista says it must be Rabbi Shmuel b'noi the son of Rabbi Yechon ben Rabbi. The Tana Rabbi Shmuel, the Tanya we learned in the Brisa, the Nosan Pidya Nafshi, the pasuk which says in Kaifa Yushasal of a Nosan Pidya Nafshi, which talks about Kaifa. The main is it. The Tana Kama says that it's the main is it. You have to pay the value of the person who was killed, how much he would have been worth to be sold on the slave market. Rabbi Shmuel b'noi Rabbi Yechon ben Rabbi and the main mazik. My lab hakim if you look to pashta the machlokes between the Tanaim whether you paid the main nizik or the main mazik is about the following machlokes. The mar sava kufra mamoina or mar sava kufra kapara. Which way round? Obvious. The one who says the main mazik understands, right, that that's a kapara. The one who says let's start there. The main nizik, why you're paying the value of the person who was killed because you did a hazak, so you pay the yoshim. Like anything, the person's not around, you pay the yoshim. So that's kufra mamoina. That sounds like it's a regular monetary payment. The one who says the main mazik, you have to pay your own value, must be because it's something connected to the fact that you that's some chayav misa and you're paying the main mazik. So that's the Gemara's having. Maila ba committing the mass of a kufra kapara, mamoina mass of a kufra kapara. Rav Papa says like, no, it's not mukrach at all. Such a thing. You can say that the kula alma kufra kapara. Everyone holds kufra kapara. So the one who says the may mazik is understood. The one who says the may nizik is shver. Everyone agrees that the nature of kofer is that it's a kapara. The question is just how do you be mechaper for your nefesh? One says b'the nizik shayminon, and one says b'the mazik shayminon. And l'chora the Gemara, you need to continue with the Gemara to understand it. The Gemara continues? My tamayu the Rabbanan. What's the reason of the Rabbanan who say that you pay the may nizik? The Tanakama referring to as the Rabbanan over here. What's that reason? It uses the word im koifa yushasala. Interesting word. Koifa should be placed on you, should be imposed on you. And this term hashasa is used lamaila. Lamaila refers to the pasuk which is somebody causes a woman to miscarry. So over there you need to pay the value of the vlad. So just like over there it's the main nizik, and he uses the word yushas. Kasha yoshisala balo isha. Interesting way of referring to payment. So mal halom with the nizik afkam with the nizik. Just like over there, it's talking about the nizik afkam with the nizik. Rabbi Shmuel, the nasan pidi nafshik siv. Rabbi Shmuel is very understood. The nasan pidi nafshik siv. It says he should give the redemption of his soul, so it makes sense that it should be the demei mazik. Rabbanon, what do Rabbanon reply? The pasuk says the nasan pidi nafshik. You're right, and pidi nafshik siv. True, it says pidi nafshik. Pidi nafshik doesn't necessarily tell you how you pay. Pidi nafshik is telling you what you're paying, how the mechanics of it, that it's a kapara, right? But mio ki shaymina bid the nizik shaymina. So the Gemara originally thought that this machlekes tanam is talo whether kufra kapara kufra minor. The Gemara's maskana is everyone agrees kufra kapara. There's a special limit to the man who says bid the nizik shaymina that despite it being a kapara for your soul, you pay bid the nizik shaymina. We're going to continue to the fourth case, the fourth exception, the einim karin b'avadivri, that you don't get sold as an avadivri. So this gets to your question, yeah? What's going on over here, right? You tried to get somebody. You said somebody stole. When you said somebody, when the Eid Zayim was made, right? When the Eidim who later found Zayim are made, somebody stole something. They're not necessarily trying to get him to be sold. They're saying that he stole. So what? So what's going on? So Savar Rav Nuna the Meimer, Rav Nuna thought as follows: that the din of Einim Karim B'Avadivri applies to a unique case. Which case? Hani mili heicha de islay ledidei. The migu de iloy mizdaven, inonamiloy mizdaven. Rav Nuna thought to say that it all depends on whether, in other words, whether somebody is nimka b'avadivri when he's found to be Eid Zayim, all depends on whether the nidoin, the person that they were trying to be mechayev, they were falsely accusing of stealing, whether he has money or not. If he has money, then einim karim b'avadivri. Because whatever the lamdas is, but basically they never were trying to make him get sold. He had money. So even if the Eidim themselves don't have money, Einim Karim B'Avadivri. Doesn't make sense to say Einim because they never tried to get the guy sold because he had money. That's what Rav Nuna thought. The Migu the airline is down, since the Nidon isn't being sold, Inunamilam is down, the Eidim are also not going to be sold. Aval Heicha the less later today. Rav Nuna thought that the Brisa was limited in his application, was only talking about such a case where the Nidon has money. But if Heicha the less later today, where the Nidon doesn't have money, right, the person that the Afal Gav the Islu Ledidu, even if the Eidim do have money, Mizdavn. That was Rav Nuna's svara. Rav Nuna's svara was that the whole din of Einim Karma is a logical thing. The Nidon has money, so he's not going to get sold. So why should you get sold just because you don't have money? But in the case where the Nidon does not have money, so you were trying to get him sold, then you would get sold even if you do have money, because ultimately you're trying to get him sold. So the Gemara says, let's skip out the brackets. The Gemara challenges and says, no, what do you mean? That doesn't make any sense. The lame rule, the Eidim can say to him, what do you mean? We tried to get you to we didn't, I don't know if this is the nusach. I'll say in this nusach, I'm not sure if it's entirely accurate. We didn't know if you had money. I'm just saying this to bring out the point. We didn't know if you had money. In other words, if you had money, you wouldn't be sold. So now that we have money, we also shouldn't get sold. In other words, we are trying to get you, we're testifying that you stole. If you have money, you'll pay. If you don't have money, you get sold. So same thing with us. If we have money, we should pay. And if we don't have money, we should get sold. So that's what Rav is tiny. The Gemara is tiny. The lame rule, the Eidim should say, and no namiloi mizdavnin. We should also, so I'm going to push back on this question. Like, okay, you're right. You know what? If the Eidim Taka have money, then they don't get sold, because they can say, if you had money, you wouldn't get sold, so we also shouldn't get sold. So the step two is Rav Nuna trying his luck, so to speak, and saying, okay, so I'll admit not if the Adam have money, it doesn't matter whether the Nidin has money or not. The Rav Nuna says, okay, you know what, I'm going to limit the application to you. It only applies to case where either one has money. Says Rav Nuna, okay, I understand. If either one of you has money, it doesn't make sense to say that you have to be an Avid Ivri. If the Nidin has money, so then they can say, what do you mean? We Bichlal didn't try to get you to get sold. You're going to pay out it. So just because we don't have money, that makes sense. If they do have money and the Nidin didn't, they can say, look, if you had money, you would pay up. We have money, so let us pay up. So Rav Nuna therefore said, you know what, based on that kasha, I'm going to say that it only applies Einim Karim B'Avid Ivri when neither of them have money. Sorry, yeah, the other way around. Sorry. The only time I made a mistake of it. The only time where they are sold, the only time where they are sold is when neither has money. But in a case where one of them has money, that's taka the din of the Bryce. Amalei Rabbi said to him, no, but Nimka b'gnei Rabbi, you're getting the wrong end of the stick. Your Havana Ramnuna that's based on Svara, that you don't have money, I don't have money, it all depends on what we try to do, and therefore if neither of us has money, then it makes sense that we should get sold. That's based on logic. But that's not the reason why Einim Karim B'Avid Ivri. Einim Karim B'Avid Ivri is a serious hakasa. The pasuk says v'nimka b'gnei vasa, that someone who doesn't have money gets sold because he stole. Says the Gemara, b'gnei vasa v'lo bizmamai, that only if you actually steal, but not if you're an Eid Zayman. I apologize for rushing through the end, but
you know, when it comes to Zayman, you have to have intent. Is the sweat of Einim Zayman that you're trying to get someone a punishment, or is it because when he's saying, I
understand what
you're saying,
you
have money or not?
L'chora, you're right. L'chora is not with intent, but ultimately, what's the Torah saying? The Torah's punishment is vasisam loy kasha zama. You do as they plotted. So we have to see, what did they plot? So in a case where the guy had money, they didn't plot Bechlal to make him Nimka B'Avid Ivri. Even in the case where he doesn't have money, they can vie to say, when they say they can vie, I mean to say that the Torah, it's not that what they're arguing. It's we can vie to say, the Bezin can vie to say that, just a second. They were saying he stole. They didn't say he should be Nimka B'Avid Ivri. Happens to be he had no money, so he has to, but we do have money.
Well, then say this for that.
The what?
That the moment you're saying that Torah should say that in this case he doesn't have money, but we were just trying to say that he stole. Say the same thing if they both have money. They both don't have money.
If they both don't have money, so then it's nothing to do with it. It's very partial. We said someone stole. When someone steals, his din is either he pays up or he gets sold.
The second person doesn't have money. The people that are
The Nidin doesn't have money, or the Eid Zayman?
They don't have money. That doesn't make a difference. The point is the guy.
Because if they do have money, then Kasha Zaman. We plotted. We gave him we testified. We didn't know. We said either you get stole, either you pay up or you get sold. We basically saying that if you have money, you pay. If you don't have money, you get sold. So the same thing should apply to us. Lamai said that Maskan is all of those. There's never a case where